So my name is Machin-Autenrieth. I'm the principal investigator for the past and present musical encounters across the Strait of Gibraltar project that's funded by the European Research Council and is based here at the University of Cambridge. My research focuses on Spanish-Moroccan musical collaborations. In particular, I'm interested with the type of fusion that's referred to as flamenco Andalusi. This is the bringing together flamenco, which is the most sort of well-known Spanish musical tradition, and Arab Andalusian music, which is a collection of genres that are believed to have originated in Muslim Spain, otherwise known as Al-Andalus in the Middle Ages, that now exist across North Africa and most notably in Morocco. Now I'm interested in how these two genres are brought together into a fusion project, and very often the ways in which this happens, because they're very different in terms of actual musical styles, the ways in which they're brought together is through the idea of a shared musical heritage, that both flamenco and Arab Andalusian music are the cultural byproducts of Spain's Muslim and Jewish past in Al-Andalus. There are three main aims and objectives that are driving forward this research. The first is to try to trace where this idea of a shared musical heritage actually comes from. And one of the things I want to argue is that we can trace much of its sort of lineage to Spanish colonialism in Morocco in the first half of the 20th century. The Spanish often promoted the idea of a Hispano-Arab brotherhood, the idea that Spain and Morocco had deep cultural, historical, genealogical connections, that they were even connected by blood, so to speak. This was a useful strategy to try to legitimize colonial rule at this time, and music was a useful way of doing that. And often many writers, musicologists, journalists and so on promoted the idea of flamenco and Arab Andalusian music as being historically, culturally, musically connected. And so this is one of the first things I want to explore, that sort of narrative structure, you might say, that underpins these fusion projects. The second aim is to move beyond simply the idea of a shared musical heritage, but to look at what that means in practice. And so there I want to trace the sort of development, you might say, of flamenco Andalusi as a fusion project, again, where it comes from, looking at the sorts of spaces, particularly under colonialism, in which flamenco and Arab Andalusian music may have come into contact, such as colonial exhibitions, conservatoires, festivals, and so on, and to trace that development into the present day, to look at, well, how has this genre been constructed, what are its characteristics, who are its practitioners, so on and so forth. And the final aim, and I think the most sort of exciting, I suppose, and most sort of socially relevant, is to look at, well, what do these collaborations mean in the context of Spanish-Moroccan relations today? And there's two approaches to that. One is a more sort of top-down institutional approach, where I want to look at how music, and particularly flamenco and its fusions with Arab Andalusian music, are being used as a form of cultural diplomacy with Morocco, by Spanish, by Andalusian institutions, to promote Spanish cultural, political and even economic interests in Morocco, based on this sort of colonial product, you might say, of the idea of shared musical heritage. And the second main thing that I want to look at is to what extent music making, intercultural music making, might factor into issues about Moroccan immigration. And I've done a lot of research, and we'll be doing more research with Moroccan and Spanish musicians, particularly in the city of Granada, to look at, well, how do musicians themselves view these fusion projects? In what ways might music facilitate, should we say, the social integration of Moroccans into Spanish society? What are the power inequalities that might exist between Spaniards and Moroccans? So those are some of the main objectives that I have with the research.